One of the first expectations of an MD is for them to know, use and feature instruments that is highly influenced by the style of music, of course. I think I've explained that anyway, but just you need to be able to play. While I'm playing, I always say to myself that if I'm on performance, like for instance, playing with Soul to Soul, I've got my parts down. However, I'm constantly scanning to check out what's happening with the drums. Is the bass tone right? What's going on with second keys? What's happening with the BV parts? So I have to have an understanding of all of the instruments. I've said that before, but I'll say it again. Right? And finally, at this stage, as an MD, you are the person that brings the band in. 9 times out of 10. Sometimes there are pickup bands and then you get dropped in. But in an ideal situation, most MDs are the person that has a database of musicians that they hire and then they bring onto the gig, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you choose wisely with the musicians. You know, as the MD, the band you hire represent you. It's your job alone, no one else's, to make sure the band are rehearsed, sound tight, and in a tour situation they're consistent. Not a great gig in Manchester, then a terrible gig in Leeds, and then a pretty average gig in Luton. Consistent throughout. It's on you as the MD, you know, during rehearsals and shows. So there is quite a lot that you have to kind of take on board as a musical director. Okay, just a little bit more about, you know, the general logistics of the musical director, and then I'll take it a little bit further, you know. With regards to employment and so forth, you know, 9 times out of 10, you'll get the call from a label or an artist manager asking you to MD the band, put it together, and then what they'll do is they'll leave it with you. They'll give you the budget for the project, and then you get on with it, you know. So it's your job to put the musicians together, you know. Really important, call the right team for the right job. You know, for myself, you know, I'm a bit more experienced. I've got a database of musicians, you know. I've got guys on each instrument that I know that if I need someone that's got a killer groove, I've got certain people. If I know guys that are more specialized in rock, I've got musicians that I know that just have key skills, because obviously different projects have different genres, have different requirements. You know, yes, I know it's good to be an all-rounder, but as you start to get more into the elite level end of performances, you know, there are going to be certain things that you need. When you hear the material, you sort of think, oh my gosh, insert bass player, he will be great for that, just for his sound and his feel and his tone. So it's really important. Remember, this is a business. It gets blurred because you're happy that you're getting paid to play your instrument, you know, but this is a business and it goes all the way outside. And so the basics apply. Be on time. As an MD, if I call rehearsals for 11 o'clock, 9 times out of 10 I'm in the room at 10 or 9:30, making sure that I'm ready. You know, if rehearsals finishes at 6, as an MD, 9 times out of 10 I'm out of there 8, 7:30, because there's always work to do. I've always got to be ahead of the band. I always have to have instruction to give that band, you know. Be consistent, be professional, always try to think outside of the box. You know, think of what's the best way that this performance can sound live, you know. Have a database of good musicians. Really critical. When you start getting into the game, if your friends are good, they're gonna have other gigs, you know. So it's really important that you've got 2 or 3 bass players, 2 or 3 drummers, 2 or 3 keyboard players, a bunch of backing vocalists, horn section, anyone that's musicians. Get to know them, get that database important. That saved me so many times, you know. Things you must have to be an effective musician. To be an effective musician and an effective MD. An ability to work under pressure. Is it pressured? Not all the time, but sometimes, you know, you really need 7 days rehearsal to do the project effectively, but the record company will only pay for 3. So straight away, your time management has to be so on point. You're getting phone calls from the artist, you've given your band a Dropbox full of tunes, and then on the day of rehearsals, they've decided that they're going to be doing the remix versions instead of the ones that the band have been spending 2 weeks prepping. It's your job to make sure that everyone stays calm, no one freaks out, and you know, you're the person that has to tell the band that, okay, I know I said rehearsals finishes at 6, but we're going to have to extend it until 9:30, 10, and so forth. So you've got to be the coolest person in the room, no doubt. Make sure things work in a short space of time if needs be. You know, going back to the Jules Holland gig, for instance, we had a situation where the version that we had came in at 5 minutes 27, the live arrangement that I had done. But then on the day in production rehearsals, floor manager came up and said, oh, our song's too long. We've got 4 minutes 23 slot, which basically meant that within the space of 45 minutes, we had to do edits because we're running track, you know, had to give band instruction and do all of these sort of things on prior to playing live on national TV. So you've got to be, you know, sharp. Your brain has to be chilled and you have to be focused. Ideas and concept person, I've mentioned that before, but I'll mention it again because it's key. You know, you cannot, you know, an artist turns around and says, I like that, but let's do something else. You can't sort of turn around and go, well, I don't know what to do. You've got to say, okay, that's fine. How about this? How about that? You know, as an MD, I say always three steps ahead of your band. 3 to 4 steps ahead of your band, which basically means if they answer the question, you already know it. You know, when I'm doing scheduling rehearsals, I have my rehearsal schedules for the whole thing up until showtime. You know, the band don't need to know half the information that I do because they're focusing on their parts, you know, but I do. It's really important. Be able to play your parts well. It's a bit of a no-brainer. Also have a deep understanding of everybody else's parts, including lyrics for BVs, lyrics for lead vocals, every sound that is played on that stage. As the MD, you've got to know it, because if there's things that need fixing, you've got to fix it. If the artist steps up and comes in and they're not hearing something, you've got to be able to identify that in detail and in a short space of time. So far I've spoken a lot about, you know, the technicalities and what's required for a musical director in the room, in the rehearsal room, on stage, the responsibilities musically. But just to add to this, there are other things that as you start to move up the ladder and the shows become bigger, there are other parts and aspects that you have to have an understanding of as a musical director. Obviously, if you're doing small club gigs, then that doesn't happen. But for myself, I do a lot of festivals and everything else. So your role actually does become a little bit more than just music. For myself, for instance, doing festivals, the festivals I have in the book currently, as a musical director, you have to have several hats that you wear, not just musical hats. For instance, I work with backline companies, organizing equipment, making sure that, like, you know, all the tech spec is right. If we're going abroad, you know, it's my job. Artist management, you know, talking about artist management, talking about concepts, arranging rehearsal times, arranging when the artist is going to be there. I need them for 3 days, but the artist has press and promo, so I can only have 2 days. So my time management. I have to deal with sound and lighting technicians, because on some of the bigger shows that we do, they need to come to rehearsals, they need to know lineups, they need to know spec lineups. I have to arrange, send out documents with the band lineup. Is the drummer on a riser? Is the keyboard player not on a riser? Is guitar player stage left, stage right? All of those sort of things. You've got to talk tech. Transport companies, hotels, travel agents, you know, if you're getting paid to be an MD, 9 times out of 10 you'll get the budget. and then it will be up to you to a certain extent to fix. Obviously, if there's a tour manager involved, you work alongside the tour manager, but sometimes if there isn't one, it's your job to kind of make sure, like, you know, work with the agents where the band are going to be staying overnight, hotels, you know, transport, when's the best time for bands to fly out, fly in, fly out, where, what time do we need to land, what time is sound check, what time are we going to eat. There's a lot of organizational skills that you have to have as a musical director. So you really have to be able, like I said it about 10 minutes ago, you have to be almost like the most chill person in the room, even though inside your brain you're thinking about 9 to 15 different serious decisions that you have to make at one time. Okay, so I've spoken a lot about being an MD, and obviously you can see there's a lot to it. You know, there's a lot of invisible things that you may not have realized are needed to have this skill. It's not a problem. It is something that you can be achieved. But if I was to summarize and conclude as to what it takes to work as a day-to-day musical director, there is one rule that I live by, and you know, this is something that I'll share with you guys that will really make things effective. Preparation is everything, you know. So when you're taking on projects similar to like what you've got now, you've got your projects that you have to have handed in like 4 weeks or so, make sure your preparation is on point. Get as much information up front as you can and act on it. You know, for me, I'll push for 100% preparation, knowing full well that 25% of the stuff that I require I will not get. Then that kicks back into being an ideas person, so then I can flip it and make those things happen. But the more prepared I am, the more the ship will run, the band will run, the performances will run smooth. So when things happen, which do happen on stage, gear breaks down, people learn the wrong arrangements, people miss rehearsals, sometimes people get ill, things happen. It's live music, it's the music industry. I expect things to go wrong, or not wrong, things to go left when I want them to go right. But the more prepped I am, the more time it gives me to problem solve, which is what I mentioned at the beginning of this particular talk, you know? So what I try and do is make a one-page plan for my week. You know, there's lots of things as I've gone through, there's lots of things that I have to do, but major bullet points. Something that I can just look at, one document on my computer, and things that I need to have. Songs need to be arranged. Make sure I get the remixes. Make sure the BVs have got their parts. Make sure that the drums have got the clicks all in place. One page solid document that just has major bullet points. That always gets me out of jail, rather than me having to go through pages and pages of emails and various folders. I try and keep things compartmentalized so it works really well. Again, work 2 weeks ahead of everybody involved. Sounds strange, but I have to, you know. I need to know the arrangements. I need to know in 2 weeks in advance what I'm going to be doing on the first day of rehearsal, what the plan is, what the structure is, what songs, what we're not going to be doing. 2 weeks ahead gives me a buffer for if things go wrong, I've got time to change and make them right. Give each project a start and an end date time. So if I'm programming, within reason, things may change, but I'll give myself deadlines, you know. Start programming on Wednesday, give myself 16 hours, and that's it. That's programming time, and I need to hit that target as near as possible. Don't get me wrong, things creep over, it's not a problem, but write it down, document it. Set timelines and deadlines and stick to them. As an MD, you cannot afford to let things slip. Timelines and deadlines are everything in the music industry. You know, you're part of a big picture. It's not just about you. You know, you can't change rehearsal dates because the artist may be needed to do a TV. They could be shooting a video. They could be required in the studio working on a remix. So you work to your timelines and you stick to them, you know. As a musical director, be confident in your decision making. You know, don't second guess yourself. I know it can be, when you start doing it, it's a lot of, because there's a lot of people looking in your direction for guidance and responsibility. Breathe, but be confident in your decision making. Sometimes you may not get things right, but if you get it wrong confidently, you know, but be confident in your decision making. Finally, enjoy the process. You've got to love it. You know, I love it. I love the chaos. I love when things happen. I love performing. It's not supposed to be a stressful situation. Because the funny thing is, on top of all this stuff that I've spoken about, I still have to get on stage and perform. You know, it's not a corporate gig. I don't MD off stage. I'm in the trenches, vibing with the drummer and the bass player and rocking out. So you've got to enjoy this. You've got to enjoy it. Then do a great job, get called back, get paid, and jump on to the next project. I hope this has really been useful for you guys, and you've taken something from this and you've learned something from this. Please feel free to email me if you've got any questions about being a musical director or how you get into the game and all of those sort of things. And finally, I want to set you guys a task which we're going to handle in the cohort session, which is basically for each one of the projects that you're doing, I want you guys to get into your groups, and then you're going to do for me a one-page plan about your start and end of how you're doing your individual projects that you're handing in for us at the end of the term. So just to clarify, the task will be a one-page plan that we'll do in the cohort session. I'm looking forward to hearing your creativity, and I hope this has been a great masterclass for you guys, and I will see you on campus very soon. Brian Henry checking out.